Hi there. Let's take another look at the character of God, what God is like. Again, working off this idea that in life with COVID-19, what do I need to know about God? The more you know about God, the better you're able to handle and deal with the things that life throws at you. So one thing that life has been throwing at us lately is this whole idea of freedom. There's been a lot of concern lately about freedom, the loss of freedom. Americans have perhaps taken their freedoms for granted over the years. We enjoy a lot of freedom, and maybe we just get used to having that. And now all of a sudden we're being told that we don't have the freedom to do what we want or go where we want. You know, kids don't have the freedom to go to school. You may not have the freedom to go to work. Most states, we don't have the freedom still to go to church and gather together like that. And on it goes. You're experiencing this. There has been a significant loss of freedom. And there's lots of debate about are the states allowed to put in these measures or not, all these things. But it's been a subject then on a lot of people's minds. Americans are not a people who suffer gladly having their freedoms taken away. We hold those things very dear. And again, in this series, I've been contrasting our limitations with God's attributes. So here we go again. We do not have complete freedom. I was just saying that. We understand it. But even regardless of coronavirus stuff, we're not really completely free. There's lots of things that we're limited by. But particularly now, there are others telling us what we can and cannot do. It's certainly the case when you're a kid, but that's different, right? Your parents can tell you what to do and what you can't do. But this whole thing of the loss of freedom can be quite shocking, especially if, like me, you live here in America or another country that enjoys a lot of freedoms. Now, think about God with me then. The Bible declares that God is free. Nothing and no one can force God to do anything. And nothing and no one can keep God from doing something that he wants to do. Let me take you to some verses in God's Word that will explain a little bit about this. And several of these, at least two of them, are really written as a rhetorical question. You hear what is said, and then you understand clearly what the answer is. Let me give you an example from Job chapter 36, verse 23. Who has prescribed for him his way? Or who can say, you have done wrong? Implied answer, no one can, because this is God who is free. We hear a similar statement in the book of Isaiah, chapter 40, verses 13 and 14. Who has measured the Spirit of the Lord? Or what man shows him his counsel? Whom did he consult, and who made him understand? Who taught him the path of justice, and taught him knowledge, and showed him the way of understanding? Again, the implied answer, no one. No one can do those things because God is free. He is not beholden to somebody else for anything in those ways. And then Daniel 4:35, I think I've been in it before with you or maybe on the other devotional I'm doing. In Daniel 4:35, we hear this statement. He does according to his will among the hosts of heaven and among the inhabitants of the earth, and none can stay his hand or say to him, what have you done? None can stay his hand or say, what have you done? He doesn't have to answer to anyone for what he does. He's free. Now, that's a good thing, I'm saying, because of what we understand about God's other attributes, which I'm getting through bit by bit. Can you imagine what chaos would exist if God were not free to do as he wished? If we, with our limited understanding, we who do not know the future and we who are not holy could force God to do what we want, that would in a sense mean that we are actively speaking, then we're God, because we're the ones who call the shots. And this is clearly not the case, and it's a recipe for disaster. But it won't happen because God is free. So you can set your worries at ease about that. We cannot force him. We are not, in fact, God. He is. Now, here's one qualifier to his freedom, if you want to call it a qualifier. I guess it is. God cannot act contrary to his nature. Case in point, God cannot lie. He never does anything that is sinful or wrong. So the Bible does say God cannot lie. Well, then he's not free to do whatever he wants. That's getting a little bit silly there. It's a qualifier. He will always act according to his nature. Part of his nature is holiness, being set apart from all things that are wrong or evil. So of course God cannot, would not, will not lie. And I do have to mention, I don't have to, I guess, I'll mention that people do sometimes talk about silliness, things that are absurd. Well, if God's truly free, does that mean he can fit a square peg in a round hole? Does that mean he can make a rock so big that he can't move it? That's just absurdities, and they're probably best ignored. They don't come into serious discussion here. So, with these things in mind, the more you understand about God then, and this is another piece of the puzzle I'm saying, or whatever, the more you understand about God, the more you understand that his freedom is an awesome and essential part of who he is. I'm really glad. It brings me joy and peace and comfort and many other things, I suppose, to know that God is free. It's good to know, and I'm glad that he is. May God bless you as you continue to know him better.